Hello, fight fans, and welcome to the Combat Challenge podcast. My guest is the head coach of Next Generation MMA Liverpool, where top athletes from his table are competing on prestigious organizations such as Cage Warriors and UFC, to mention but a few. 10 years ago, he received his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt under the guidance of Chris Brennan. And a fun fact, that my guest is the first man from Merseyside to receive his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, Mr. Paul Rimmer. Paul, thank you so much for joining us, my brother.
Thank you for having me on, mate. Appreciate it. That was a really nice introduction. Yeah, it's good.
You know, like it's like my MCing days. I really want to get into it, you know. So I'm like, I'm getting you ready for the fight, brother. I'll be like, you know, fighting out the red corner, weighed in at light heavyweight. Anyway, brother. So, Paul, first of all, thank you for coming on, because we spoke last week and you said you had a busy week ahead of you, which you did because you had the trilogy to deal with and you had numerous athletes competing last weekend on Cage Warriors. If you can talk me through which athletes you had on there and talk me through how that went.
So on the Thursday night, we had Matt the Beast Bonner on. On the Friday night, Matt the Beast Bonner fought. He competed against James Webb, the former Cage Warriors middleweight champion, and he won his fight. On the Saturday, we had on Nathan Fletcher. He fought Michelle Martignoni. We had Liam Gittins fight Brian Boulon, and we had Paddy the Baddy fight David Martinez.
And how did they all do?
Everyone won, except for Liam Gittins, who got stopped. I don't believe that the stoppage was a fair stoppage, to be honest. I think the fight was stopped a little bit early. I know a lot of other people do as well, but, you know, unfortunately, it is what it is.
Well, I had Matt the Beast Bonner on the podcast talking about his martial arts journey and talking about that fight. And then he came on after the fight to have a post-fight interview. That brother did well, because at one stage he was against the cage. He was kind of, the other guy was leaning against him and he was able to kind of pivot out and unleash the punches, right?
Yeah. Yes. So that was a massive part of Matt's game plan. We knew that James Webb was going to look for the takedown against Matt. We knew he was going to keep pushing forwards and trying to drive him into the wall and try to get him on his back and attack him from that position. So in the camp leading up to that, as well as working a lot on match striking, we worked a hell of a lot on takedown defense, wrist controls, get-ups. We knew exactly what Matt was capable of. And I think sometimes, because, especially before Matt joined us, his record doesn't reflect how good he actually is. And I think a lot of people just think, it's Matt Bonner, I'm going to be fine with this. This isn't like this isn't going to be a tough fight. And underestimating Matt is one of his strongest weapons, I suppose, because he has a great skill set. He has a great engine on him. He's one tough bastard as well. So, like, we know exactly how that fight was going to go out.
Nathan Fletcher, again, I had him on the podcast. What did you know about his opponent and what specific game plan was to deal with Nathan's opponent?
Well, we'd watched his opponent fight against Wesley Meyer from the trilogy beforehand. So we knew that he was very good. We knew that he was a good grappler, good striker. We knew he was very well-rounded. We also know how good Nathan is as well. Nathan has had 5 professional fights, finished all 5 fights. All of his opponents, except for one, were undefeated. And the opponent that he had that wasn't undefeated had only lost 1 fight. We know exactly where Nathan's headed. We know exactly what he's capable of. We know how much he does in terms of his work in the gym, how much he does outside the gym. Like, in terms of his ceiling as a bantamweight moving forward, it's very, very, very high.
And he fought against, was it Michelle Martignoni?
Yes.
And that guy was undefeated. Was it 5-0 or 6-0?
He was 6-0.
And talk us through the end of Nathan's fight with Michelle.
So if you watch the fight, you will see that like Nathan hit a lot of takedowns and Michelle kept just trying to stand up. We practice a lot of back taking in the gym. If you watch any of my guys fight, you will see like very similar patterns in the stuff that they do. One of the things that we work consistently on is back taking, and what Nathan was trying to do from the get-go was trying to get that position, 2 hooks in on his back and rear naked choke him. If you go back and watch Nathan's fights, you will see that pattern in his fights. I believe personally that is the most common submission finish that you will see in MMA. So that's what we practice a lot of.
So talking about that submission, we'll move on to Paddy Pimblett. Just talk us through that fight and how we ended up in a similar position.
Well, we drill a lot of stuff that like I think maybe other gyms maybe miss out on, aren't aware of. But Paddy drew his opponent towards putting his back on the cage, launched a head kick, and then he onslaughted him straight away because his back was on the cage. So he can't move. So Paddy was on him straight away. Strikes, flying knee. That forced his opponent into a clinch situation. We knew what a good wrestler David was going to be. Paddy nailed an absolutely beautiful throw. Boom. Flattened him straight on the floor, straight away into mount. And I seen a guy put a comment and he was like, your mount needs a bit of work. But that's not what needs work. Paddy was not trying to mount the guy. Paddy was on top of him, so he'd expose his back. As soon as he exposed his back, Paddy's striking, locks in the rear naked choke. Perfect finish.
It's interesting that somebody would say that about Paddy being on top, because when I watched, obviously the hip throw first, brother, and the way he just landed straight on him and landed straight into side control, and that guy, his back just hit, so that must have kind of winded him a little bit. But then when Paddy went into the mount, it went quite high, and he kind of put on the sole of his foot and lifted his knee up to invite and kind of create a trap. Is that how it came across to you?
Exactly that. It doesn't matter what level of MMA that you're at, okay? Someone mounts you and starts landing punches on you, you are going to expose your back to try to get out of it. Doesn't matter what level you are, and we know that. So as soon as Paddy mounted, pushed his face down, boom, straight away, before he even threw a shot, David turtled straight away. Paddy was all over that. I think he's the best back taker in MMA in the whole world. I don't see. You watch any of his fights? I can't remember. I think maybe one fight in his whole career, including amateur, where he doesn't end up on someone's back. He's phenomenal on it.
Well, even on that last fight, just to break down that segment, when he gets on David's back, David kind of like tries to tripod, but his hooks are so deep in his Paddy's that he's not going anywhere, is he?
No, he's not going anywhere. If he's on your back, he's there to stay. You know what I mean? May as well get him a tenancy agreement, because he's not shifting from there until he wants to get out.
Now, what's Paddy's record now in pro MMA?
16-3.
Brother, I think it's time, man. I think it's time, Paul. And when he finished, Paddy's going around and he's giving it all this, Dana White. He mentioned someone else, Sean Shelby. You've got, I think, did he say you got Graham's number? Give him a call.
Yeah.
Right. Brother, you got to tell me, what was with that dance? Did you know, one, that he was going to do that dance? And where's he got that dance from? Number one,
I've no idea where he's got the dance from, but that's Paddy's signature dance. And yes, I knew he was going to dance. You know what I mean? He's he loves it. Some people, when they fight, they have that fear of fighting. Of course, nerves, that sort of stuff. And a lot of people, when they finish fights, they win fights. Of course, they're celebrating, they're on a high, that sort of stuff. Paddy loves fighting. He loves it. He lives it. So when he's in the cage, that is where he wants to be more than anything else. There is nerves, of course, but there's not nerves at the same time. He's not nervous like anyone else gets. To like excitement nerves, not, oh, I'm gonna be going in for a fight. Like, he doesn't consider losing an option ever. So as soon as he gets in that cage, he is like mentally switched on and he is just like ready to go. That's why he celebrates in the same way that he fights. It's all him. It's his personality. There's nothing fake. It's all real.
For sure. Well, when I did the post-fight interview with Matt Bonner, and he was telling me that in the back when Paddy's there, so everyone's got their own little nerves and they have anxiety and they have their own rituals and stuff. But Paddy is just so excited and he's so confident. And exactly like you said, in his mind, he does not think that he's ever going to lose. And when he goes out there, he's just so like chomping at the bit to get out there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what I say. He loves being in there. That's why, you know, he brings a special atmosphere. He brings a special, there's just something about him that like people love or hate. You know what I mean? People love him because he's so much fun in there, but I also know people hate on him because he's so much fun in there. But he's all business. He's all serious at the end of the day.
Now, we've talked about your athletes, brother, but that's not why we're really here. We need to talk about you, my friend. So if we can break down your martial arts journey, and if you can share with us from a young age what sort of sport and gyms you went to and how you ended up on this martial arts belt to where you are now.
I started martial arts when I was 5. My dad took me to watch Karate Kid at the cinema, and I was like, I want to do karate. So I was like, okay, that's fine. Let's put you in karate classes. And then that week he took me to judo instead. He didn't know the difference between them or anything like that. So I started in judo, and I was doing judo on and off for about 7-8 years. And then one of my cousins, he started doing traditional jiu-jitsu, so I started doing traditional jiu-jitsu, and I was involved in that from when I was 11 till when I was like 18, 19. The guys that I trained under, when it wasn't just like a normal jiu-jitsu club, there were a lot of doormen involved in there. Taught me a lot of stuff that like I probably wouldn't have got at another club, a lot of that sort of stuff. But when I was in school, a friend of mine had told me about a kung fu master that lived not too far away and stuff, and we went round to his house, and this was about when I was about 15. I was very, very lucky that the kung fu master that I went to was actually like a genuine guy, like, you know what I mean? If you've ever seen like the Ip Man movies on Netflix, he was one of Ip Man's students. He was a phenomenal martial artist. And I know people watch this, they're into MMA, and they're probably like, oh, you know, kung fu. But like I can say to you now, without doubt, that George, who was my instructor, was one of the best martial artists I have ever met. He had more of an impact on me throughout my martial arts career, I suppose, than I would with my students, if you know what I mean. Like when I trained kung fu, it was like I would go before school, after school. You know, it was a very traditional relationship of instructor and students. So I travelled all around the Far East in my 20s, training that sort of stuff, and then I'd always from when I was about 13, 14, I'd always like watched MMA, and you know, the UFC had just come out, and I begged my parents to send me to the Gracie Academy when I was 15, because that was like the only place you could learn jiu-jitsu at the time. They wouldn't do that, so I ended up like I say, just sort of sticking with kung fu, and I buy grappling magazines and I practice moves on my brother and my friends and that sort of stuff. And then I was in work one day, and I just decided I've had enough of this. I'm gonna fuck off to America. Excuse the language, sorry. So I just decided I'm gonna do this. So I found a gym, Next Generation, that was in California, and at that time you could go and live in the gym. So I got a bank loan, took off to America, and I lived in the gym.
Paul? How old were you?
22. So like martial arts for my whole life. So I just decided 22, I'm going to go to California, turned up at the gym, and that was that. Like literally started training jiu-jitsu, MMA. You know, I'd done some boxing, some Thai boxing. I'd always played around with different martial arts, but like that was the first real environment where I was exposed to people that were living MMA, living jiu-jitsu, full-time training, and being around that sort of environment.
And how long did you stay in America before you came back?
The first time I went, I was there for about 7.5 months, and then the following year I went back again for another 4 months. So it was quite a while. So I was training 6 hours a day, every day. You know, it was intense training. It was good. It was the best thing I ever did.
And brother, is there another fun fact that you ended up competing against this really heavy dude?
Yeah, I don't know who told you that. I did a grappling competition in Arizona, and it was the Arizona State Judo and Wrestling champion walked on the mat with his white belt on, and I think he was like 310 pounds or something at the time, and I was just like, oh my God. I think at that time I must have been probably about 90 kilos, something like that. But because it was in like the heavyweight division, there was like no upper end to it. He ended up mounting me and arm barring me. I just couldn't shift him when he got to mount. But it was a good experience. I've always enjoyed it.
From America, when you came to the UK, when did you start coaching, and how was that journey?
So when I was in America, at that time, well, one of my training partners was Jason Tan, who runs the MMA Academy, and we both came back and we were training partners, and then we ended up starting a small club in what is now Cowbon. So, you know, me and Jason would train, and basically we were just looking for people to join us. So we had training partners and just trained some people up. And then just sort of fell into a coaching role from that, I suppose. We ended up training lots of well-known MMA fighters from then on. It's just all sort of steamrolled from there, really.
And why did you decide to keep an affiliation with Next Generation? You know, I'm sure you could have opened something in your own name, but why did you keep that affiliation?
I suppose because, well, I've always loved Chris's style of jiu-jitsu, and I had such a good relationship with him, and you know, I think the world of Chris. You know, I'm one of them guys where, like, from my traditional background, like, if you're my instructor, you're my instructor. That is how I see things. Like, in this modern world, people are sort of like, you know, martial arts is like Sainsbury's and go shopping where it wants. Well, you can go and do that, but you can also have a fantastic relationship based over decades with someone that you trust, you care about, and that is just as interested in you as you are with them. And that's always me. I'm always going to be that guy. I'm loyal down to the bare bones of me. So Chris has a style of jiu-jitsu that I love. He's a great person. We have got a great relationship. Like, he's gave me everything from my blue belts to, like, I'm over my 3rd degree black belt. I can't wait for him to put that stripe on my black belt. It means more to me getting it off him than it does from getting it off 5 or 6 different people. Yeah,
for sure, brother. And it is that loyalty, because you get some people who nowadays have become quite fickle, and they'll just gym hop. They'll think of it as like, and the analogy I give is like having a utility provider. You know, you might have a Virgin, and then they think, oh, I don't like this package, I'm going to go to Sky, and then I'm going to go to BT Spot, and then they end up coming back to Virgin. But that relationship with Virgin gets diluted than what it was in the first place. Is that kind of how it feels to you as well?
Yeah, I mean, as a coach, we've had people join our gym from other gyms, and we've had people leave and go to other gyms or start their own gyms or go and do whatever they want. That is entirely up to them. I think the problem is a lot of the time when people do that, they decide that they're going to spoil the personal relationship as well, which is like something that, like, I'm kind of not into. But yeah, it's just the way the world is these days. You know, I do get being an athlete can be quite selfish sometimes, and people have got to make the decisions that they want to do. But what we do at the gym, we have a process to, and the people that stick to the process seem to get further than some people that don't stick to the process, is what I think. But I wish the best of luck to anyone in this game, and it's a short-lived career. So whatever you've got to do to make it work, you have to do that.
For sure, brother. And you talk about that loyalty between you. So, for example, you having an instructor, that is your instructor, and that's how, you know, the boundaries are set. When I did the podcast with Paddy, he mentioned you, and he says he has that relationship with you where if there's something that he needs to talk or get some advice, rather than, you know, speaking to someone else in his family or other friends, if there's anything sensitive, he'll come to Uncle Paul. And that's what he calls you, you know, and that's just,
no.
And that's you've kind of cascaded your kind of moral and ethos onto people like Paddy, which is really cool, right?
Yeah, very. I just think you spend that much time with people and you develop these sorts of relationships with them. It can't just be business. It's like it's never that with me. You know what I mean? If I won the lottery tomorrow, I'd be in the gym the next day doing what I love, because this is what I love, with surrounded by the people that I love. Like, you know, that's how you live a happy life. You know, I just see the relationships that we build can be, you know, so strong that like they transcend fighting in a cage. That's how I see it.
For sure, brother. But if you did win the lottery, you'd go to the gym, but I think you'd go in your Bentley next time, wouldn't you?
Probably, yeah.
Brother Paul, now, you know, you've been a great coach to a lot of people. A lot of your students have been on the podcast and sung your praises. Is there any coaches and mentors that have played a significant role in your martial arts journey? And if so, who are they?
Yeah, I mean, so Chris Brennan is number one. You know, Chris has been a fantastic influence. He's helped me out throughout the years. We've got a great relationship. His jiu-jitsu is phenomenal, and you know, I can't thank him enough for all the stuff that he's done for me over the years. But in terms of thanking influences in martial arts, I'd actually like to do something a little bit different instead, and I'd actually like to thank the coaches that work with me now. Okay, so first person I want to say a massive big thank you and massive props to is Ellis Hampson. Ellis is like my right hand man at the gym. He's as much of a head coach to the guys in the gym as I am. He's a phenomenal coach. He has put just as much work in, if not more, to all the athletes that compete on the trilogy that I am, and he deserves his props. Again, another one, Adam Ventry. Both Ellis and Adam are my black belts. Adam's really embraced the coaching a lot lately, and he's becoming a fantastic coach. He's done a lot of work with Paddy for this fight, and you know, you can see how much that paid off for both of them in this camp. We have our Thai coach Simon Audley. Sai is one of the unsung heroes of not just Thai boxing but MMA. You know, he does Molly McCann striking. He was Darren Till's Thai boxing coach back in the day. You know, he is someone that's got like a fantastic mind towards fighting. And like I say, these guys, the names never get mentioned. That's why I want to give them a lot of props. And the other person is Paul Reed from Vortex Strength and Conditioning. Paul is doing something that none of the other strength and conditioning coaches in the UK are doing. He's stepping up for the English MMA organisation. He's working with about 75 other people that aren't even involved in MMA on the nutrition. Like, he is fantastic. They're linked in with John Moores University. I cannot say enough good stuff about Vortex Strength and Conditioning and how much of a difference it's made to my athletes that use them guys.
Well, talking about Paul, there's at least half a dozen athletes that I've on the podcast, and when they talk about different people, and they always mention Paul Reed and about not just the coaching side of it, but his strength and conditioning, the nutrition, and how he breaks things down. So obviously, there's a bit of a pattern there, right?
Oh, of course. That's what I was saying before. I mean, there's a process to things. There's like a way things should be done, and sometimes people will be like, oh, this PT's offered me this for free, or my friend does this and he's offered to do this. Well, no, seek out the best guys. Okay, that's what you should do. You should seek out the best coaches, the best sparring partners, the best training partners, the best of everything. Okay, and then listen to what they have to say and trust their process. Okay. Sometimes it can be difficult being a fighter because you have everyone's input telling you what you think they should and shouldn't do. But what I can say is, if you look at the guys that get to the tops of the sport, what I should say actually is, I think a lot of fighters go, I want to be in the UFC. Okay. So as an amateur, before their first fight, they're already talking about being in the UFC. The family are talking about them being in the UFC. They're doing all that sort of stuff. So the first thing that they should do is they should work out, how are you going to get to the UFC? Okay. So for example, I would argue the toss against anyone. The Cage Warriors puts more people in the UFC than any other organization in Europe. That is a fact. Okay. So if you want to go to the UFC, you should be on Cage Warriors. Okay. Are you at a gym that is going to get you into Cage Warriors? Yes. Well, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to go to the UFC if you then achieve the goals set within that. So, for example, the process for our guys will be get a good amateur record, build that experience up, get 1 or 2 pro fights, then look to sign for Cage Warriors. And then we're going to build you towards getting you ready to compete for a title. Once you compete for a title on Cage Warriors, there's not many people who've held a title on Cage Warriors that then haven't moved on to the UFC. So we have a process in place where that's what we are doing. That's what we are looking at. We want to feed people to that show. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't great shows out there. There are fantastic shows out there. Too many to mention. But in the Northwest, we have FCC, UKFC. We have Cage Warriors Academies. We have all these fantastic shows. They are really, really good. And I'm not saying that them guys won't get you to UFC or anything like that. I'm just saying that there's a process in place that we have where it's easier for you to see that become a reality, if that makes sense. And that's what I want for our team. I want them to have goals that they're able to hit and achieve and know what's coming next and where they're going to go from it.
Well, it does make sense, because if you just look at the banner that Cage Warriors has on their Facebook page or on their YouTube channel, you can see the people with the straps, you know, like, so you got Dan Hardy, UFC, he was on Cage Warriors, he did well, got onto UFC. Mike Bisping did well, got into UFC. Conor McGregor did well. But so, yeah, it makes sense what you're saying, brother. It definitely does.
Even the commentators on Cage Warriors have ended up going to work for the UFC. You know, that's what I'm saying. That's the organization that you want to be part of. And I think, like I say, you know, if you're a professional athlete coming up, you know, or an amateur athlete coming up, and you're looking to how you're going to get to the UFC, you'd be mad to not consider Cage Warriors to be the option to get to the UFC. And listen, it's not for everyone. I know a lot of people that would like to sign for Bellator, you know, go fight in ONE FC. There's a lot of different routes. It's not just the UFC that is the only route towards building a career and fighting. You know, there's a lot of different routes to do that. I'm just saying, as in, like, I think most fighters want UFC. I think that. So on that way, how are you going to get there? You know, if you think you're just going to win loads of random fights and then someone's going to come along and give you a call, doesn't necessarily work like that these days. Maybe 5-6 years ago, when there was less professional fighters, and 5 years before that when there was even less and less. Now there's a lot. All the divisions are stacked. UFC have hundreds and hundreds of fighters. And sometimes in one division, they can have nearly 200 guys in one division. I think you've got to stand out. You've got to stand out. You've got to have the achievements in place that the UFC would want. Yeah, they've got to notice you as well. So, you know, you can build records and build careers from smaller shows. I just think it gets noticed better from Cage Warriors. I think they put the work in, and it shows in the athletes that they present to everyone.
For sure. Well, the way you've described it, for me, it kind of looks like, so you're on this side of choppy waters, and you want to get to the UFC. Some people think that they can just jump far enough, but it's too far. But for you, what you're saying is Cage Warriors plays a good part in putting those right stepping stones to get you across the choppy waters into the UFC, right?
Of course, yeah, of course. And they make no secret about it either. You know, I think they've had like 99 athletes signed from Cage Warriors to UFC. That's phenomenal. That's what you should be looking at. They're on UFC Fight Pass. You know, Graham, Ian Dean, all the guys at Cage Warriors, they do a phenomenal job. They have amazing production. They have the contacts to bring in fighters from all over the world. You know, people in America are aware of Cage Warriors. They're aware of the fighters on there. So it's a fantastic show. And like I say, you know, if you're a young upcoming athlete, you've got to plan out how you think your career is going to work. If Cage Warriors doesn't feature in that, which it may not do, I think the job's going to be a lot harder to get to the UFC these days.
For sure, brother. But listen, if Cage Warriors ever need someone like the Schmo, you know, just remember to mention me, brother, okay?
Always, mate, always.
Thank you. Now, one of the things I've noticed after interviewing quite a few people who are, well, competing on Cage Warriors, but more importantly, a part of your gym and your stable of athletes, there's a different personalities there. How do you, as a coach, kind of deal with and cater for the needs for those personalities?
It can be difficult sometimes, you know, I'm not going to lie, you know, it's you can have one guy that's really loud, one guy that's quite introverted, you know, everyone's different, everyone's got their own personalities, but we all work together as a team. Everyone's got the same goal. Everyone wants to push each other to the next step. Everyone wants to get to the UFC. So everyone's working together for that. You know what I mean? Personality wise, you know, people are bubbly and stuff on camera, but just because they're in the gym, that doesn't mean that they're not working hard. It doesn't mean that they're not grafting to get to the next step of the career. So it all works. It all works really well.
Now, if there's other people who are interested going down the route of coaching, from your knowledge and experience over the years, what advice would you cascade down to those individuals?
So if like someone wanted to become a coach of a gym, that's what you're saying.
For sure.
I think one of the right things to do is to be the guy in the gym that is selfless and helping other people regardless of what that means for you. So if you're a fighter and you want to be selfish and you want to get somewhere with fights and you want to focus on yourself, that is great. No one is saying that's like the wrong thing to do. But there'll be that guy in the gym that's like, do you want some pads? Like, don't put your arm there. Try and do it like this a little bit. Hey, coach, do you want me to cover that class for you? Do you know what I mean? Like, they're the guys that like, they're just like going above and beyond. And when they finish fighting or fighting doesn't work out for them or whatever like that, they're going to be the guys that automatically fall into that category of starting to be a coach and working hard at it. Like, I think that's very important. I think other things like committing to what you say, being punctual, you know, improving your knowledge is a massive thing. Like, I think people sort of sometimes think that guy's fought, so he's going to be a great coach because he's got all this experience. Sometimes that doesn't work because fighters can be selfish. A lot of the time they're only coached for them and what they should be doing. So, for example, if I had a guy that was like a phenomenal wrestler and he'd been doing a lot of wrestling work with us, eventually when he moves into coaching, his game would be very wrestling heavy, okay? Because he's been coached for him and he's only passed on the knowledge that he's taken in, okay? Where I think sometimes, like, for myself, where I've never been a professional fighter, like, I can spend a lot of the time that people would have been putting into fighting and competing, into studying and observation, breaking stuff down and being able to input that over into fighters. Like, I'm not saying any way is right, by the way, because people will have their like, oh, I don't want to train under anyone that hasn't fought professional MMA or anything, that sort of stuff. You don't have to, you know, but if you take a good look at a lot of the leading coaches, I know a lot of them were in the sort of similar boat to me. I've got a lot of guys that have fought professionally on our team that are coaching. Like, if people have questions about that sort of stuff, you know, they can go to them. But I also would take my experience of coaching over the years as opposed to the experience of a fighter fighting, just being a good coach, if that makes sense. And there are some excellent fighter / coaches out there that are doing a really, really good job. Guys like Brad Pickett and Alex Enland, James Doolan, like they are all doing like fantastic jobs with their gyms and stuff. So like, you know, I'm not saying my way is right. I'm just doing what I'm doing, and we're getting good results from doing that.
Paul, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience with us, and hopefully you'll come on future podcast onto Combat Challenge, my brother.
Anytime you want, mate. Thank you very much for having me on.